VGTribune.com reviews Persona 4. If you haven't read or seen VGTribune.com's preview of Persona 4, we'll start off with a bit of a primer on the story for you. Prior to the start of the school year, the protagonist moves to the rural town of Inaba, moving in with his relatives, a police detective named Dejima, and his daughter Nanako. Over the course of foggy nights, 2 murders are reported, apparently tied in with the infidelity of a local celebrity. Through his classmates, the protagonist learns of the mythical Midnight Channel, where a person may be able to see their soulmate by looking into a TV screen at midnight on rainy days. When the protagonist tries this, however, that rumor turned out to be false. Instead, he discovers that he not only can see the people that were murdered, but he can also put his hand through the screen. With his friends, he finds that he can completely pass through the screen of a large flat-screen television and enter the Midnight Channel beyond it. There, they meet Teddy, who explains that the victims had been pushed into the Midnight Channel, and that when the fog in the television dissipates, they are met by shadows of themselves and killed. The fog only dissipates in the Midnight Channel when fog sets in after periods of rain in the real world. The protagonist and his friends realize that the murderer is using this to his advantage, and are forced to save a classmate before a foggy day when she falls into the same predicament. After helping his friend face their own shadows and gain the ability to summon a persona and to enter the Midnight Channel themselves, they form an investigation squad to learn the identity of the murderer. Having the game for 17 days, I probably should have written this review earlier instead of waiting to finish the game before reviewing it. I say this mainly because even after dividing my time during this period to 2 reports, 4 exams, Tom Clancy's End War, and playing Persona 4, I still haven't finished it. Even after pulling an all-nighter today, reaching 109 hours and 37 minutes of gaming, Persona 4 is still going strong. As a result of this, I have 2 suggestions for anyone who still has not bought a copy of this game. Go buy it now, while winter break is still here. You'll need all that time to beat this game. And 2, obviously, since you didn't pre-order, you won't get an art book. So my second suggestion for you collectors out there is to go and order a copy of the art book while you still can. I would talk more about the art book had GameStop not screwed up and given mine away, but no worries, as I'll add something in later when my bigger Japanese version of the art book comes in. Anyway, time to dissect Persona 4 like that pig in the biology class that I will never take. First, let me say that this game was amazing. Compared to the many current-gen JRPGs like Tales of Vesperia, Lost Odyssey, Valkyria Chronicles, and worst of all, Infinite Undiscovery, this game is incredible. P4 is a game like Vesperia that kept me playing for 100 plus hours with a less cliche story. It's a Valkyria Chronicles that doesn't look as great, but uses the same style, especially with sound effect balloons, with a less predictable story. Though I should mention I can't really blame Valkyria Chronicles for the story, since it is based on World War II. There's only so much room to wiggle. It's a Lost Odyssey that keeps you entranced in the story with much, emphasize on much, better pacing. I hated those long readings. And as for the UI, all I can say is that it looks pretty. Although P4 is less pretty graphic-wise than the other titles mentioned above, it will last 2 to 3 times as long with no bad lip-syncing, back of the head view for the win, and has a story that is actually coherent and enthralling. Okay, now let's take a look at the story. Overall, the story of the game can be best described as deep, dark, filled with high school angst, I'm looking at you, Kanji, and enthralling. They also managed to keep the variety of personalities in the main cast, which keeps the story entertaining. Since the setting in the story is much lighter than in P3, the level, character, and overall tone and design was much brighter than that of P3. Pacing for the story will overall depend on the player. In my case, I found it to be much more fun than that torture chamber in P3 that is known as Tartarus. Overall, the dungeons can now be completed during the first visit, or over multiple visits, allowing for extensive leniency in saving time for social links and the sort. Even then, it's likely that players will go back to any dungeon more than once for the sake of collecting materials, making armor and weapons, and completing quests. The dungeon design looks great with a lot of variety, and there are not 400 levels to crawl through. So pacing is much better for the players in Persona 4 than in previous iterations of Persona. I must personally admit that some of the maps are strange, such as the striptease, which, to say the least, was interesting. The battle system. In this installment, I felt much better about the battle system than with that of P3, mainly because I could actually give direct commands instead of leaving the AI to figure out what I wanted it to do. The new summoning has its own attracting points compared to the Evoker. When I previewed this game, I figured I would miss the Evokers, but I haven't so much since the new animations, in my opinion, seem to exude this air of dominance that makes you feel like you're in control of your personas instead of the Evokers that were just plain cool. In P4, players are sure to find that almost always the first time they enter a new dungeon, that monsters are much more alert. I swear, they have to have eyes in the back of their heads. But during the following visits, they are much more subdued. Players should remember that now that the main character is no longer able to equip any type of weapon, they'll need to figure out the timing of his swings to catch shadows off guard, or else prepare for a painful beating. The battle system overall is the same as P3, save that there are no longer fusion spells, so I assume that nothing similar to the Lucifer and Satan combo are still there, so all the fights are actually fights, not instant kill spamming. Depending on how much a player will level and his equipment, boss battle difficulties will differ. My advice to anyone who intends to do dungeons in one visit is that since you'll have bad equipment when you fight the boss, make sure your party's level is sufficient. Destiny Draw. Oh, and a note for all of you who, like me, got used to make money by treasure chest and card draw, I'll simply say, don't depend on it. The chances of getting money that way are so low you're better off playing a roulette. Oh, wait, it is a roulette. In P4, the draw system no longer does the evil things that P3 did, like overlapping cards, etc., but it also no longer puts up experience, money, and stats cards. As a result, the developers added the second draw system, where you draw an Arcana card from the 20, hence roulette, and then randomize whether it points up, good effect, or down, bad effect. This system is overall more forgiving than the previous Destiny Draw, but can be a real pain. Word for the wise? Never, and I mean never, spin the Death Arcana. Win or lose, you're gonna cry. Compendium. Persona-wise in this game, the repertoire of personas can be described as substantially larger than in P3. Many of the new personas are ports of demons/spirits such as Devil Summoner, adding several new personas every few levels. In general, the fusion system stayed the same, save for fusion of 4+ personas, which becomes much more forgiving since it tells you the ingredient persona you'll need to make the resulting persona. Oh, I almost forgot. Another tip for players of this game. Concentrate on completing your party member's social link, since in this game, the persona evolves during the maxing of the link instead of by event like in Persona 3. Complaints. Now after all the good stuff, I would like to state my complaints about this game, which are more personal than objective, but this being a blog, who cares? My first complaint that I have for this game is the removal of the social link reversal system, I think. By removing that, especially in terms of juggling, I personally found that it took away some depth from the system, as everybody is somehow happy-go-lucky with you, no matter what you do. The second complaint I have against this game is the depth of the relationship system. The discrepancy between the relationships and the social link's depth can only be described as staggering. Many of the social link's depths reaches to the bottom of the deepest ocean floor, while the relationships are about as shallow as the ice sheet on my windshield. I live in Florida, FYI. Albeit some events do play on the relationship, I personally thought they were too lacking. My last complaint is that I cannot believe the decision tree that occurs near the end of the game. In order to move on normally, and not get bad ending 1, one must make multiple decisions, which branch out into something like 4 choices 4 times, making it 256 possible branches in decision of which one will lead to the next part of the game. That's excluding the branches that come up when you pick the wrong choices. In short, near the end of the game, players will be given a tree diagram with thousands of branches, and they must pick out the right branch or get shot by the bad ending. Which is quite evil of you, Atlas. Thanks, Atlas! Sense the sarcasm? There you have it. The good, the bad, and the new stuff about Persona 4. Now why are you still here instead of going to buy it if you haven't bought it already? We here at VGTribune give Persona 4 a hearty recommendation to fans of the Persona series, anyone who has watched Trinity Soul, and any JRPG fan. Persona 4 gets a 9 out of 10. P.S. Maybe it's just me, but since I went from playing Persona 3 while in high school, now that I'm in college, I can't feel the intrinsic connection between myself and the character's social problems much anymore. Wow, I suddenly feel like an old man playing a role-playing game to feel young again. What do you guys think? Feel the same way? Let us know in the comments at VGTribune.com. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to visit
VGTribune.com. Video game news all day, every day.